Great. So we've got a quite a busy agenda this morning. We've got a lot of attendees that have been registered. So just a bit of housekeeping before we begin. We'd be grateful if you could keep your video and your microphone off while the speakers are presenting. And if you have any questions during the presentations, if you could kindly drop them in the chat, that would be great. And we'll either address those towards the end of each presentation or in the Q&A session towards the end of the session. So these are just a quick overview of the speakers that we have got taking part this morning for this event that's jointly delivered by the Growth Hub and International Synergies. Ian Humphreys will kindly be our MC for the event this morning. So he'll be your host and handing over from speaker to speaker. So as I mentioned, we've got quite a busy agenda, and the way in which we're going to play this is that each speaker has around 10 minutes to deliver their presentation. And then once we've gone through all the presentations, depending on how we get on for time, we'll either have a question or two at the end of each presentation, but ideally we'll collate those questions into one big long list and then address those at 12:50, which will be moderated by Ian. So I think without further ado, Ian, I will hand over to yourself, and you can feel free to share your slides, and you can kick off if that's okay.
Yeah, sure. So I will. I'm just showing my technical ineptitude again.
That's all right.
There we go. Okay, good morning. Good afternoon as it is now, everyone. I'm Ian Humphreys, Director of Operations for International Synergies. We're a small environmental consultancy based in the Jewellery Quarter in Birmingham, and thank you very much to Will and the Growth Hub for inviting me to act as the MC for today's events. Given that the theme is net zero and carbon reduction, it might not be obvious to everybody why we're talking around circular economy and resource efficiency and some of the areas that are linked to sort of material efficiency rather than the more obvious areas of fuel reduction, energy efficiency and managing the sort of things like heating of your premises, etc. So I just want to put that in context before I hand over to our agenda of learned speakers. So this visual here is taken from a recent report issued by the British Business Bank, which came out towards the end of last year. And I don't want to major on every single point that's made on this busy slide, but I just want to draw your attention to a few areas. And particularly if you're a small business, who often the idea of doing things outside of what you consider the core elements of managing your business day to day and just keeping your head above water in respect of testing times that we're in at the moment still, then this is sort of echoed in some of the findings of this report in that in respect of overall emissions in the UK, actually small businesses or SMEs are responsible for 50% of the greenhouse gas emissions in total from UK industrial processes. It's fair to say that this is still an area that SMEs are getting to grips with. And there's probably about a 50-50 split in respect of businesses that are starting to tackle carbon reduction as part of their day-to-day business or consider it to be a high priority, and those which sort of don't see it yet as a high priority. But that's actually slightly contradicted in respect of that where smaller businesses are concerned. Although sort of 76% of those businesses questioned are yet to actually implement any decarbonisation strategy or looking to move towards this idea of net zero emissions, about 94% of businesses have actually said they've taken at least one action. And that's the thing, is sort of that realization that you don't have to change everything overnight, and whatever size of business that you are, making one small change to reduce your carbon emissions through the amount of energy you're consuming or the amount of materials that you're wasting is a valuable contribution. So again, what I want to do now is just move on to another visual. This one is taken from the International Resource Panel report that came out in 2020. That again clearly demonstrates the fact that the extraction of raw materials from the earth and the creation of products and services from those raw materials has a huge contribution to the overall greenhouse gas emissions that are emitted across the entire planet. So that is something that's actually growing, as you might expect, with certainly developing economies like China and India still having a huge impact. That from 1995, where only 15% of the total greenhouse gas emissions were due to these material extractions and product production, that's actually increased to 23%, and that is still an upward curve. So it just again demonstrates the importance of us all including resource efficiency and circular economy activity in our day-to-day operations to drive down those greenhouse gas emissions and the impacts on the planet. As I say, when it comes to considering net zero, and you still might be getting your head around what exactly that means to you as a business, say quite often and quite naturally, the focus goes towards looking at your electricity usage, the gas you're burning in your business, the amount of oil or sort of other fossil fuel alternatives potentially. So it's all about, tends to be, the initial focus is on what we call scope 1 and scope 2 emissions, which is around power consumption and power generation and heating your premises or providing heat to the processes that you use on a day-to-day basis. Now, actually, when you look at the footprints for a wide number of industries, which is what this graph is showing, which is taken from an American cross-sector report, so hence probably some of the odd names for various sectors. But again, it clearly demonstrates that scope 3 emissions, which is where things like your raw materials, your waste generation, the logistics in terms of vehicle movements of moving your services and products to the point of need, it has a huge impact on most businesses' overall carbon footprint. So typically between 60 to 80% of your carbon footprint is likely to be associated with these areas that are outside of providing fuel and heat to your organization. So hopefully that gives you a flavor of why this is an important topic and why that looking at resource efficiency and considering circular economy models is important in minimizing your carbon footprint and moving towards a net zero model for your business. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hand over to the first of our speakers. So if Andy, you want to get ready to share screen and unmute. I've known Andy for a good while through some of the work we've been doing in the West Midlands, and Andy is a sustainable practitioner. He's an associate for Sustainability West Midlands. He's previously worked for over 30 years in Advanced Manufacturing Global Corporation, and he's recognised for sustainability, developing circular economy innovation. Andy's also chair of IEMA's Circular Economy Network, and I'll now hand over to Andy to conduct the first presentation of today.
Thank you, MC Humphreys, and thanks, Will, for inviting me to speak today. Let's crack on how to engage with the circular economy. First of all, get the advertising out of the way. Sustainability West Midlands, who I'm associate for, we are sustainability advisors for cross-sector leads across the West Midlands, who we established in 2002. I'll come on to that in a minute. And we do consultancy, networks and advocacy and membership. And we have a roadmap, our own sustainability goals roadmap for 2030. Our members are wide and varied. And just a quick plug for our 20th year celebration event, which will be on the 10th of March this year at Millennium Point. So if you haven't got a place booked for that, it's going to be a good day out. Okay, moving on quickly then. Why should you be interested? We're going to look at what is the circular economy and then a few examples to try and demystify that. So, okay, why should we be bothered? We're essentially at the perfect storm now. So we've got energy prices increase, India and China have got coal prices, Russian gas availability is stopping production, causing massive price rises everywhere. Shipping, disruption, labour, lack of skills, politics, climate change and technical revolution. So computer chips disappearing, we can't make stuff. Production is affected, and that leads to inflation, boom and bust economics, which some of us remember and some of us remember how bad that was. Some of the things we take for granted, like future copper demands, are going to changed massively. So we've got electrical vehicles requiring 4 times more copper than internal combustion engines. Wind turbines require 5 times more copper than power stations. And so to sum that up, I've created this sort of risk assessment approach where we have resources, stuff basically, and the availability of it. Lack of it results in unemployment, poverty, crime, obesity, social unrest, riots, and increased death rates. So probably wise to do something about that. And there are a number of circular economy models in place. Ellen MacArthur, IEMA's is an old RICO one there. But they're great if you're an academic and you want to work through it and discuss it on level, but at a practitioner's level, there isn't a lot to do. So we need to demystify that more. And so here's an example from a colleague of mine, Debbie Ward, who runs the Circular Economy Club for this region, talks about the circular economy aims to keep products and components and materials looping at their highest utility value at all times. In other words, a life cycle approach. Okay, still a bit complicated. Let's break that down. It's about designing out waste, designing out pollution, maintaining material value, and regenerating natural systems. Okay, it's still a bit, how does that apply to me as a business? Well, I can understand the waste bit and maintaining value. Okay, let's go with that. Okay, let's try and bring it down to what we call a mass balance approach to try and simplify it. I'm a product or a company. For that, I've got stuff coming in as inputs. I've got stuff going out, which is probably products to customers. And there's things what I don't use, such as raw materials, process waste, packaging, heat, sort of things that Ian talked about before. So we should look at how we can reuse these or get them back from our customers for reuse. And then also how others can reuse them. So we could develop a waste to product program. We could sell it. We could reuse another process, Ian's industrial symbiosis, or send for recycling. And to do that, we created, we turned this mass balance, IEMA, we turned this mass balance into what we call the extended resource ownership model, which is sort of what you see there, more of a map approach. And that's designed for circular economy practitioners to talk to non-experts to understand aspects of keeping resources circular. It's just a practical decision matrix as you work your way through it step by step. It's a simple step-by-step approach, basically. And you can see it there. There's a link there if anybody's really interested and wants to follow it through, feel free. But essentially it just works your way from sustainable design through the resources you choose, through to your sustainable business, how you deal with customers, and how you deal with the outputs from your organization, and ultimately how you come back to the start to design further products to consider all these things. Big learning point for me as I put this together with the team was designing for the design aspects. And so I had the pleasure of meeting these two legends here, Sophie Thomas and Suzanne Baker, and they taught me basically these 4 design models. You design things for longevity. It lasts longer. You could lease it out, and that way, when you lease it out, you get it back when people are finished with it and you can decide what to do with it. And that could be remanufacture it so it goes back out to a different customer, or even design it for recycling so you can break things down. It makes it easy to recycle. And again, you still got to work on demystifying this circularity. And so we came up with, instead of trying to explain a biological technical nutrient cycle or how we can minimize systemic leakage and negative externalities, just try to come up with 5 circular economy questions for normal people to understand. And these are based on the 5 R's. So 5 R's being refuse, return, reduce, reuse, and recycle. And again, to break that down, it could be just, is it actually needed? Can we use it again? Do you need so much of it? And if you can't use it, can someone else? Again, industrial symbiosis. Or can it be turned back into what it was or something else, such as recycling? And this is a case study that I developed while I was working at RICO. Basically, we've got these imported pallets and the imported toner, and it comes on very, very robust pallets because the transport required. Okay, so over the period of a year in 2015, we had 12,500 of these. 2,500 got damaged in the process, so they went to the recycling centre as polyprop and got recycled that way. But 10,000 got reused and sent off to our Netherlands distribution centre. Okay, that was all good. What's the effect though? Well, these actually went and challenged how much is a pallet, wanted for a start, and we worked out it was £280,000 a year savings just by reusing these. But more recently, I've calculated that in terms of net zero, that's a carbon saving of 196 tonnes. So probably worth doing and considering. Most company organisations have pallets. Could you consider reusing them? Yeah. Another part of the process, these toner caps had RFID chips in them, and so the disposal process, recycling process was incineration at the time. We were challenged with finding a different one, and bizarrely we came up with a fridge recycling process, batched the material through there instead of running fridges through it, came out with polyprop, and that was sold and used for coat hangers. So again, good. We've gone from a zero waste to landfill solution, kept us in tune, brilliant. What was the effect? A 77% cost reduction, £92,000 saved in that particular case. You can apply it also, again, with the personal protective equipment, PPE, that you approach. So Signpost Diagnostics, the company that's doing all the COVID testing, they were using these lab coats. They approached Stay Safe, this company here. The lab coats are £25. They approached them, say, can you incinerate and get them away safely? And Stay Safe said, no, we actually wash them and repair them if they need damaging in an NHS approved process at a lower temperature, saving energy, but it destroys COVID. And now they do up to £200, 200 per week, £5 saving each because they cost £20 each. That's a cost saving for that company of £208,000 a year, saving 13 tonnes of waste, but miraculously 190 tonnes of carbon just from reusing stuff. And there's other examples there where they do gloves and make massive savings. Another company that I've come across recently, the Centre Group Sustain, remanufacture furniture. So again, they sell furniture, office furniture out to the customers and bring it back, remanufacture it, goes out for another life, or they recycle it. Cycle of Good, another recent one I've tuned into, where they take inner tubes, waste inner tubes from places like cycle shops that sell them. People just post them into there. They get taken to Malawian tailors, and they get turned into these products, again extending the life cycle of that material. And these are quality products, believe me, I've seen them. Okay, tech's a good thing. Tech that we use and buy. I don't buy new tech anymore. I buy remanufactured tech from companies like Music Magpie, because it makes sense. It's cheaper, it's still as good, it gives it another life. And there's lots of other companies looking at this. Michelin tires lease, bizarrely, to trucks. Netflix don't actually, if you think about it, don't physically use a product. So where's all the DVDs gone that we were using and the videotapes? Davec umbrellas designed for longevity. So they over-engineer it and make sure that it lasts. They charge more for it, but it lasts. And Colour Reel is, again, one of the ones that I was looking at when I left the last organisation, where instead of having multiple reels of cotton that go into sewing an emblem on a diagram, you use a single one and you spray ink onto it, which saves a massive amount of waste. So it's just looking at things differently. One of my favourites, again, is Jinan Xiaobin Eco Farm. Takes 200 tonnes of food waste a day. It's fed to 1 billion cockroaches. The cockroaches' waste is used as fertiliser. The dead cockroaches are fed to chickens, and the chickens go back to the restaurant. Properly circular. So you can consider circularity in a lot of things that you didn't before. Within the West Midlands, we're lucky that we have the West Midlands Combined Authority net zero business pledge that we can tie into as well. So if you're looking to find information on that, free consultations, and show that you're willing to do this, that'd be the way to do it. And to summarize then, we've got circular economy strategy, develop sustainable business. But the result is businesses and customers are now beginning to demystify, as you can see from the presentation, the circular economy as a strategic net zero issue and contributor. And we have reduced environmental impact of operation, extended life cycle of materials. And for me, it really is about doing this because it's about business continuity. And that's basically it. Thank you, Ian.
Thank you, Andy, and thank you very much for keeping to spot on time. just going to post one question here. There is another question that's come through from Darren about grants, which I think might be best fielded by Will towards the end of today's session. But one thing I just wanted to ask you is that obviously a lot of companies are new to this concept of circular economy. And if a company is kind of interested in the area that you've just presented and wants to make that first step towards looking at how circular economy might be applied to their own business, what's the one piece of advice that you give them in making a good start on that journey?
And to keep it short, what you saw in the presentation, there were two aspects that I've tried to sell, because basically in a boardroom, money talks. So I've always tried to put the cost savings in place so that your financial director, whoever's responsible for that, wakes up and goes, oh, that's a good idea. Go away and do it. And then it doesn't matter that they don't understand the circular economy or net zero. As long as you flick that light switch on, you've got somebody involved and you can start the journey that way. So I'd always start with money talks.
Okay, thank you. That's really good advice. Right, thank you very much, Andy. A really great presentation. I'm going to hand over now to our next presenter, Emma Payne from the Birmingham Play Care Network. Emma, I'm going to do as we agreed. I'll see if I can take control of the screen and pop up your presentation. Can you see that okay, Emma?
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Ian. Can you hear me okay?
Can hear you absolutely fine. So if you just give me the old next slide when you want me to cue on the next one, I can do that for you.
Will do. Thanks, everybody. Thanks to Ian and Will for inviting me. And thanks very much, Andy. Hopefully I'll be able to make reference to some of the points you've raised in my presentation, because I'm probably the curved ball today. You're all sitting there thinking, why on earth is Emma there from Birmingham Play Care Network? Next slide, please, Ian. So Birmingham Play Care Network, we're a registered charity. We are operating in Birmingham and have been for the last 25 years, promoting the importance of play with children. We also work with older adults and communities, but we run a scrap store which reduces waste to landfill. And what I want you guys to think about this morning, when I was driving into work this morning at 7 o'clock, listening to Radio 4, they were talking about the fact that as a population, we are suffering from something called attention saturation. Yeah. So we're all obsessed with tech. We're all scrolling on our phones. And that means that we are giving attention to things all of the time and not always having time to think about being bored, which may lead to creativity. That's where the children come in. I'm absolutely passionate about the next generation because they're your workforce. So I not only want to provide all of you guys with kids who've had the opportunity to create, make, destroy, recreate, I also want them to have the skills to be able to come and say, I'll have a go at that. Because at the moment, what we're looking at is a generation of children, young people that are so afraid to fail because they don't want to have a go at things in case they get it wrong. And all of us, when we were children growing up, I think that you would agree that you've got to have a go at something, have a try, make mistakes, and then move on. Next slide, please, Ian. Nowadays, I'm just going to draw your attention to this map very quickly. We used to roam, you know, 10 miles from our homes. Nowadays, you can just see there on the slide, the son, Ed, aged 8, the tiniest circle on the map. He's allowed to go to the end of his street. How are we ever going to experience risk, challenge and being creative if we're not allowed to experience anything? Next slide, please, Ian. 20, 30, 40 years ago, I tell a lot of people about the story of stuff. We were allowed to use our imaginations because there wasn't much else to do. What you guys need to be aware of as local businesses is you can provide children through the scrap store with this stuff. I need your stuff. When Andy was speaking a moment ago, he was talking about the money aspect of things. And I can come to many, many businesses in Birmingham and say, how much are you paying out on skips? Would you like me to reduce that for you by half? I went to a company that was spending around £8,000 a year on skips. We now go and do regular collections from them of their waste, stuff that's been discarded, which again was in one of Andy's slides, and we help turn that waste into something that is either going to be a craft item or part of a play environment. Next slide, please, Ian. Your waste that you think of as waste becomes a material or a play prop. It can provide a stimulus, it's a building block for wild play, and in schools and what I would call artificial spaces, they enhance the opportunities for children to have a go. And if they're having a go with something that would otherwise have been discarded, it doesn't matter if they make a mistake, they can just go on and do the next thing again and try again. Next slide, please, Ian. So we've just relocated. We know International Synergies because we too were based in the Jewellery Quarter. Unfortunately, we're not there anymore. We've moved out. The congestion zone squeezed us out. We are a registered charity and we're now based in leafy Northfield. It's fantastic. We love it. Next slide, please, Ian. Oh, Ian, could I have the next? Thank you. So here's a quick picture for you, a visual of some of the stuff we take. We collect loads of stuff from architects' practices, actually the Jewellery Quarter. So we take sample books, we take tile samples, we take brick samples, you name it, we take it. This is us doing an exhibition at the NEC of some of the stuff that we take that would otherwise have ended up in landfill. You can see some paints down in the corner there, pallets that have been repurposed, pattern books and samples of some of the stuff that comes from architects. Ding, ding. I love it. And it's not just me that loves it. Schools love it, nurseries love it, crafters love it. Next slide, please, Ian. We take it away in its raw form and we make it look really pretty because we're just playing with the stuff. And then schools come in, nurseries come, individuals come in, and they then turn it into whatever they need to turn it into. Okay, Ian, next slide, please. We're running a project called Let's Play, which is mainly based in schools, but we take lots of stuff, big stuff from companies, and that goes into the playground to encourage children to have a go at some of this creativity. Next slide, please, Ian. So we might give them a play container, they might provide us with something themselves. Okay, you can click away, Ian, and show people some of the stuff that we take. So we take cardboard tubes, we take reels, we take netting, we take artificial grass, we take workwear, cable reels, rope, fabric by the van load. Next slide, please, Ian. Okay, just a few more images of the stuff that we have. Foam, yes, love foam. We do take bits of furniture. You can leave it on this slide now, Ian. Yeah, go to the boys in the den, if you would, thank you. So then we train the school staff, lunchtime supervisors, after school clubs, on how they can use these materials to encourage creativity. And the great thing is that I can also send images like this to businesses that have donated to us. I have to hand here, I don't know whether people can see me, hopefully you can. We collect from a business called Solihull. They sell ceramic tiles, but this is their waste. These are sticky pads that go between the ceramic tiles. They are super sticky, okay? Crafters and kids love these. We take these by the black bag load, but then I'll say to crafters, oh yeah, we've got a load of Solihull stickies in. I don't care what they do with them. Solihull don't care because it means it's not filling up their skips or paying for them to be recycled. We're just taking them away to a whole new customer base. And then I'm advertising in my literature, oh, thanks very much to Solihull, they've donated loads of equipment to us, loads of sticky pads, which is great advertising for a local Birmingham businesses that's reducing waste to landfill. Some of the stuff would never go to landfill. BMW are a fantastic example of that. I just tap into their circular economy and I pull out 1% of their daily waste about every 6 months. They love that because stuff that would go into their circular economy is coming out, going to a child who's going to make something out of it. So it enhances their education, their creativity. And who knows, that child may know they're playing with a cap from BMW, and one day they might aspire to buy a BMW car. I do understand maybe that's selling my soul to the devil a little bit. However, you know, to have BMW as a partner, for me, as a tiny, tiny charity in Birmingham, that's pretty amazing. That they see the value of allowing me to pull out of their circular economy. Next slide, please, Ian. Few more images of some of the stuff. Those great big blue Corex sheets there on the left-hand side, those are from BMW. Next slide, please. Okay, and next slide. So why do people come to the scrap store? You can click through all of this one in. I think there's 5 points. It's great for the environment. It makes good business sense. We're helping people reduce their waste to landfill. We get stuff every day. I can't tell you how much stuff we get. We try to give people ideas and inspiration, but lots of people are crafters. They don't need our ideas. They'll go away and think of ideas themselves. And what we want to do is we've got to think about the next workforce. We've got to encourage their creativity. We've got to draw them away from attention saturation and think about being a problem solver. Next slide, please. I'm linked to Reuseful. There are 90 scrap stores like me across the country. Lots of you won't know about us. We've got loads of volunteers. We're supporting thousands of community groups, directly providing children with the resources that they need, but also annually diverting millions of kilos of waste. So if you've got something that you're throwing away, don't think skip, think scrap store. Next slide, please, Ian. Scrap. It's got to be clean. It's donated, it's sorted and redistributed, and then picked by other people. Next slide, please. I'm hoping it's, oh yeah, quick one on the waste journey. But I think actually Andy's slides are so much better than mine on that one, but it's the same principle. Next slide, please. Who are some of our donators? BMW, tarpaulin supply and repair, loads of interiors and architects practices, Mr. Gohill from Gohill's Emporium down on the Ladypool Road, Victoria Carpets from Kidderminster. Next slide, please. If you've got stuff that you're throwing away and you think, I remember what Emma said about that, and it's a bit weird, I like weird stuff better than anything, drop us an email. Thanks, Ian.
Thank you, Emma. I think we just about got away with that. Right. Let me just check for questions in the chat. Yeah, one of the things I just wanted to check with you, Emma, is that obviously for businesses donating materials to yourself, and I'm really glad that you could present today, because what I wanted to do is make sure that all the delegates here today, no matter what type of business they are, no matter how large or small they are, you're a great example of where anybody can get involved with being more resource efficient and closing loops in terms of materials and reducing their carbon impact. So yeah, thank you very much for giving up your time today. But obviously one of the concerns for businesses, I guess, is donating something that's classified as waste. Is that what can you provide them in terms of evidence of where those materials are being used, or and that they're being used safely?
Yes, so as scrap stores across the country, we hold the low risk waste status. So if you donate stuff to us, as long as we will do a risk assessment on it when we meet you and look at your waste. And we will share that paperwork, that agreement with you. But once it comes to a scrap store, it automatically then assumes a low risk waste status. So we have people come to collect from us. They are aware that they are responsible for the reuse of those items. And some scrap stores take paint and other things that may previously and quite rightly be classed as hazardous if it was then coming into contact with children or stuff like that. But there is a specific process that we go through as scrap stores nationally to identify and classify what the product is that we're taking from you, and then if anything needs to be put in place before then we can safely say it would come under a low risk waste status, we would do that. So yeah, it is all very closely monitored when we initially take on a new donor.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Right. It looks like you've already got some interest being registered through the chat. So hopefully you can make a note of that and follow that up. So that's all good. Right. Thank you very much. I'm going to now pass on to our next presenter today, Tim Johnson from Cora and Spink. Tim's probably provided me one of the shorter, more novel bios to read out this morning. Tim says that he spent the last 20 years pretending to work in the fashion industry. I'm sure that's not true. Staying mostly behind the scenes in product development. His first love is travel, and his second love is a good backpack. Over to you, Tim.
Well, thank you very much, Ian, and very happy to have been invited here today. And thank you, Emma, for that great introduction to Scrap Store. Really loved that. And that falls into sort of what we do as a business here on a slightly different scale, if you like, or a desire to have a different scale. So I normally like to start off these 10 minutes with like a little thought exercise. And for one way you can take part, have a look around you right now. Look at what's in the room with you. Look at the clothes you're wearing, the things on your desk, the things that are around you. And whilst I'm waffling away with this presentation, think about those things and then think about what's going to happen with those things next. In the next 6 months or the next 1 or 2 years, not 10 or 20 years. So in the very near future. Now, bit of background. I'm a firm believer in practical solutions, simple solutions to waste. And basically, on the back of a bus in 2004, I created the business that was Cora and Spink. I thought, how was it that we could reduce the amount of virgin material going into the textiles that we were using at the time? And it ended up being a thesis that I wrote for my degree called The Environmental Impact of the Fashion Industry with a Practical Response. You can read that. It's still in print on the website, coraandspink.com. I think we will maybe be able to send out links to that if you want to have a read of it. But that 2004 thesis looked at where my clothes are going when I've finished with them. Where does non-virgin material come from? And most importantly, what can I make and sell that doesn't damage the earth in a broad sense? What is a practical solution to reducing the virgin fiber consumption that we use in textiles today? So, Cora and Spink backpacks. How and where I source materials for Cora and Spink backpacks. What problems do I face? What have I learned? Now, I'll preface this with a little bit of story time. Long time ago, I was told a story by a wise person. I wish I could recall exactly who it was, but it's one of those sayings that just resonates with me because it's so simple. He said, if your great-great-great-grandparents would recognize it, if they would know how to use it or eat it, if they would be already using it in their everyday life, if they would know how to repair it, then it stands a chance that that product would be as sustainable and environmentally balanced today as it was back then. Of course, it depends on how old your family is, but great-great-grandparents really should be replaced with before the Industrial Revolution. Industrial processes, really advances in technology, play a major role in the problems that we face today. Very low-cost products, disposable products, the race to the bottom, have made it uninteresting to think about what happens next in the life cycle of a product. For Cora and Spink, I originally started looking at how textiles were made the old-fashioned way. I initially started out at going from farm to sheep to wool to yarn to jumper, all in-house with every step controlled internally. For fun, I decided to ensure that everything was organic as well. I ended up manufacturing the world's first organic woolen yarn produced to mass production standards. Unfortunately, that business never managed to get off the ground, lack of funding for want of another few other issues along the path. But it was a stepping stone for what we have today, which is core and swing backpacks, controlling everything in-house, like the farm to jumper, is one way of knowing exactly where all of your materials come from, going into your products from the ground up. But this process can be time consuming. Today, for our products, we don't spin the yarn, weave or knit the cloth that we use in our bags ourselves. We entrust this to external providers. So we were really, really lucky. About 5 years ago, we came across a source of reclaimed cotton in India itself. Hand weavers were taking raw cotton, new virgin cotton, as well as recycled garments. They were taking the garments that were donated or collected, mostly from the West, and they were breaking it into their component parts, shredding it, if you like. And they were spinning that into a yarn that could be hand woven, hand spun, and then hand woven into the lining cloths that we use in all of our backpacks right now. Using a non-virgin textile in replacement of a virgin textile is obviously a start of the circular cycle when it comes to a textile product. It enables us to do two things. It enables us to reduce our impact on the environment. It reduces our need for new materials to be grown, made, processed. It benefits the environment in multiple ways. Which brings me on to non-virgin cloth and fibres. It turns out that most textile production, especially natural fibres, have been utilising non-virgin raw materials for a long time, especially more traditional textiles. It was a real happy coincidence that I was looking for a source of biodegradable natural materials. So ending the cycle of production, really, by those products naturally biodegrading, not leaving an impact, too much of an impact on the environment. When questioning the producers, and this is going back some time, they explain the history, certainly of old woolen garments would be broken down and used as filler for more expensive raw wool. It goes without saying that 99% of our products, or in fact, actually 92% of our products on average by mass are biodegradable. We are using certain products, trims and accessories within the products that unfortunately are made out of plastic. We haven't got a suitable alternative to this yet, but it is something that we're looking at in the future. Of all the products that we do make, now something that gets questioned to me quite often, certainly when it comes to why our products are natural and not made out of polyethylene or polypropylene, and that is when people talk about recycled bottle plastic going into textiles. It's something that's a little bit of a bugbear for me, and it's something that's only happened in the last few years. People are recycling plastic bottles into textiles, but where does that textile then go next? 99% of the time, and there probably is a statistic, 99% of the time that a plastic textile is made into a textile, that will be end of use. It will be end of life. So it will go to landfill or eventually landfill. I was going to go into a story because we were recently approached by a government body and go into a story about changing people's attitudes and how larger organisations have the upper hand when it comes to the small businesses like me, and that we have to be conscious of the marketing messages that we receive when we Google or we're searching for something that is ethical or sustainable. Most of the advertising that we see, certainly the top results in Google, are paid by large businesses who don't necessarily have the credentials that they would like you to have, or like to make you perceive that they have. We call that something called greenwashing. Anyway, we're coming up to the end of my 10 minutes. I think that most of all, let's think back to our great-great-grandparents and that analogy of thinking about traditionally made products that they would recognize. Because if we utilize traditionally made techniques and traditional techniques in all of our processes, it's probably good for the planet. So, yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Tim. It's always refreshing to see someone who has the confidence to deliver a presentation without PowerPoint.
I wouldn't say that that was necessarily true.
No, very good, very good. I say a really interesting presentation about, I guess, how one in relation to starting up a new business and taking on that challenge, and two, obviously looking at how you can do that sustainably. A few questions. First of all, one from Joanne, who asks you, where did the name Cora and Spink come from?
Well, Joe, that story is from my great aunt Cora, who went travelling many moons ago when it wasn't so normal for women to go travelling, unfortunately. And she was an inspiration as she was ahead of her time, and one of those stories that passed through, and an interesting name. And it was available as a domain name as well.
All right, thank you. Just one question regarding, like, have you ever been asked by customers or clients in respect to proving your ethical credentials, and how have you gone about doing that?
We've never really been asked, because we do have quite an open website where we discuss where we're sourcing and who we're sourcing through. So with regards to proof, sometimes that is difficult simply because we are a small business and the volumes of products that raw materials that we're purchasing. So there's an element of trust that goes into what it is we're doing. But we do get certificates when we can get certificates from suppliers. But we work very hands-on with the suppliers. Certainly for the last 3-4 years, we've been working with the Khadi board of West Bengal and sourcing through cooperatives. So we know that that supply chain is authorised by a government body. I would like to go further into the audit trail of our raw materials, but that's something that is a work in progress, if you like.
Okay, that's great. And so thank you very much for giving up your time today, Tim. We'll move on to the next and final presenter shortly. Just one thing that I pulled out of your presentation in respect of the challenge of looking at alternatives for the plastic yarns within the backpack. If anybody out there in respect of delegates has any ideas or potentially can help Tim in his quest for finding the answer to that conundrum, I'm sure he'd be delighted to have you make contact and sort of provide any help and support in that direction.
Thank you.
Okay. Right. So without further ado, we'll move on to our final presenter today, who is Dr. David Boseward from the Royal Agricultural University. David is head of entrepreneurship at the Royal Agricultural University, and David brings a wide range of leading-edge practical industry-centred experience to education, providing both a theoretical informed and practice-led approach to business management education. In recognition of his work and achievements in 2016, David was invited to be a member of the Maserati 100, which is the top 100 individuals in the UK actively supporting the next generation of future entrepreneurs. Over to David. Just need to unmute, Dave.
Yeah, you can hear me and hopefully you can see me.
Yes,
okay,
all good.
Brilliant. So I'm presenting some work that we're doing at the university on the circular economy, and a PhD student who's doing that is called Simeon Heeman. So some of the slides I'll reference him. The first thing, as an agricultural university, we think about the circular economy is that every year 4.5 million tonnes of UK grown fresh produce is basically lost because it doesn't look right. The aesthetics of the carrot shown here is not right. So when we think about the circular economy, sometimes we think about some of the latter stages of a product cycle, but one of the first things that we need to think about is actually the stuff that we grow. And if you ever go to a field of vegetables, you will see a lot of them are basically thrown away. And if we could just use that for 4.5 million tons of fresh vegetables, we would not have any food poverty in this country at all. So that's my first message, is that along with some of the things that Tim said, it's the mindset of the consumer that we do need to change to accept some of the things within the circular economy, as well as business itself. Because we all want an organic, fresh vegetable that looks perfect in the photograph, and it's not always possible, and it's not always sustainable. I just wanted to bring out a few points from the other speakers, as well as this definition here. So the way I look at a circular economy is that it's a social, economic, business ecosystem. And I think Emma demonstrated that really well, in the sense that it's that connection of other businesses that she's dealing with, the connection with the schools and the children, and that social economic unit that they have there. And of course, it doesn't have to work on one level, it can work on multiple levels. I also don't like the word waste, and I think once we start calling things waste, we almost have got rid of it and don't want it anymore. So nothing's waste, everything can be reused. And there's some great examples of reusing feces and waste in the agricultural world, where we plough it back into the fields and we reuse it. And more importantly for me, it's a business model. There's always got to be a business element in there, and it's, as the other speakers have also speak about, Andy and Emma and also Tim have said, it's good business practice, and so that's what we need to be developing. The work that Simeon's doing is around chocolate, very much the heart of Birmingham. It was a good basis. And what we wanted to do is look at the circular economy and how the circular economy could be introduced to the chocolate value chain. Most of you probably don't know where chocolate originates from. So these countries here are predominantly, these 5 countries here are predominantly where the raw cocoa beans are collected from. And the country we're actually looking at is the one which is in green, the Ivory Coast, which is in the middle there. Around 80% of cocoa that we consume in the UK is coming from that country. So it's one of the largest exporters. There's a website called SourceMap, and it's a great open source depository of where you can look at different supply chains. And I'm using Hershey's as an example here. And you can see here where Hershey's gets its raw products from. And you can quite clearly see the 26 relationships it has in the Ivory Coast. And if I look at that, you can see here are the cooperative farmers that Hershey's use in the Ivory Coast. And what you can see is that they use cooperatives because it's an easier way of collecting lots and lots of beans from lots of farmers. And most of the farmers are getting around about 6% of the price of a bar of chocolate. So I put Sainsbury's up here. That was the price on Google yesterday. £1.50 for a bar of chocolate, which means that the farmer is getting around about 9p for a bar of chocolate. Tesco's is the example here, but also Aldi, Walmart, and all the other guys are making the bulk of this. They're making about 44%. And so what we see is that there's a disconnect between the risk that people take and the profit that people make. And that, when we start to try and introduce this circular economy, we start to see issues around that, or how you introduce it. But the other thing that we need to look at is where the waste comes in the circular economy. So if we could just balance things off a little bit and get rid of the waste in these different areas, we would have a much more sustainable business model and a much more circular economy model around it. So what we've done is we split it into 3 different areas. The first is the harvest in the Ivory Coast. The second part is the international transport and logistics, and the third part is the chocolate manufacturing in Europe. And what you'll see is that waste in Europe and in the UK is highest. The waste that we tend to have in the Ivory Coast is very small. However, we still have a lot of circular economy opportunities in the Ivory Coast. The other thing that you've got to notice with chocolate is that there tends to be a financier, a middleman, who's involved with the transportation and logistics. And to introduce a circular economy business model to chocolate, we need to influence that person. And the issue that you have around that is that this person tends to deal with futures. So they're buying future products of the chocolate harvest in upcoming years. And it's not in their interest to increase the price. And it's not in their interest to try and get people to talk to each other across the business value model. So they try and control the price. But what you can see, and if I just skip ahead a little bit, what you'll see is we've identified, and the little blue circles are what we identified, the opportunities for this circular economy to exist. Now, there's lots of circles there which you can see. And so what I wanted to do quickly is just to provide you with a couple of examples of how people have started to introduce the circular business model across the chocolate sector. The first one is a company called Kasami Drinks. Now, top right-hand side, you can see that that's the white flesh that you get in a chocolate bean. The bean is actually inside that white flesh. And to harvest the chocolate, you crack open the pod you can see the yellow pod. You start to take away the flesh, and then you get the bean inside. This means that quite a lot of waste is around this flesh. Now, this flesh is a very sweet tasting flesh, and you can just eat it normally. But because the processing is done in factories, the flesh is just thrown away. So this drinks company has set up drinks on the side of the road in the Ivory Coast. So these guys take the flesh, they process it, and they make it into a drink. But also they've brought that drink back into the Netherlands where they're selling it. And that helps provide a value for the white flesh around the cocoa bean. Another example is this chocolate company, which is based in Switzerland. And when you start to process the chocolate bean and trying to get it into the cocoa butter, there's a waste that you have around the sort of husk of the chocolate bean. Now that is still can be made into chocolate. And what this company has done is they are making chocolate purely based on the waste of other chocolate businesses, and the chocolate tastes exactly the same. It's a premium product, and they are basically making a profit out of other people's waste. So these are just two examples of what we can do as part of all the different circular models that we can have in the chocolate trade. Of course, the biggest opportunity is around the packaging and the transportation, the logistics, both within the UK and also Europe. And that's something that we still need to investigate and look at. But there's lots of opportunities to evaluate this circular business model, but also lots of opportunities to also balance out the business model of chocolate to ensure that there's a sustainable business model for farmers as well. Because at the moment, having 6p is not really the best way of moving forward. And what we tend to see is the farmers are using child labour because they're not getting enough money, and therefore they're not investing as well. Okay, so thank you very much.
Thank you very much, David. Just one question for you. Obviously, very interesting looking right across the value chain of that chocolate example, and sort of looking for circular opportunities. Is there sort of one takeaway from that piece of work? If there are any budding entrepreneurs out there like Tim that are looking to start up their own businesses that they could use in respect of looking at how circular models could be applied to their own businesses?
I think one of the examples I haven't put up is there's a company that's looked across the whole value chain, and they've come up with a way of analysing and sharing the risk. And they've looked at all the different stages of the chocolate. They've analysed the risk, and they apportion profit based on your risk. And of course, farmers have a lot of risk because you could have, we have rain in this country and storms, and all the apples fall off the tree, and we don't have a good harvest. The same happens in the Ivory Coast for farmers there. And by sharing the risk, everybody in the value chain starts to think in a more ecosystem environment method, rather than just thinking, this is my business, this is my part of the business, and I don't really care what everybody else does because I'm just going to do my bit. But when you start to share the profit, you start to share the rewards, your mindset changes, and that's interesting. And they're only just launching, so I didn't put their name up there, but they are starting to think in a complete value chain way, which I think is really important.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, thank you very much then, David. I'm now just going to present a few final slides regarding some support that's available in the area that's part of the support that's readily available through the Growth Hub. So if I just find that, and then I'll hand over to Will to conclude. And Will, we mustn't forget that there is still one question that Darren Powell posed right at the start about grants and how those can be used and applied to businesses in the West Midlands and beyond. So I just, as I say, very briefly want to talk about the BASIS project, which is something that International Synergies delivers in the Birmingham and Solihull and areas surrounding. It's led by Birmingham City Council. Again, if you've looked at any of these examples today and felt inspired, but maybe still a little reluctant because you feel that it's going to be too much of a pull on your resource, or perhaps you don't feel confident of where to start, then there are many different support agencies out there that can provide free support and advice on how to make a difference and how to start your own journeys towards net zero. BASIS, or the Birmingham and Solihull Industrial Symbiosis Project, is just one of them. Industrial symbiosis, I appreciate, is not a phrase you'll be coming across regularly in your day-to-day lives. It's not something that easily trips off the tongue. But essentially what it is, you've seen lots of examples of it today, is that we're trying to help businesses move from this, taking in natural resources, so the things that you need to do day-to-day, be that heat, energy, raw materials, that can be as simple as sort of writing paper, it can be logistics, etc. You do something with them to create your products and services, and then quite often you'll have waste being produced alongside those. So if you look under your desk, you've got a waste bin. That's where your waste lies. So the idea is we want to move you away from that sort of linear take, make, dispose model to something that's more circular. And the way we do that is that we have a network of businesses across the West Midlands, and we try and link you up with those businesses such that your waste becomes someone else's valuable input. We'll provide you with a pair of hands to do that. We'll come and have a chat with you and a look around your business in respect to what waste you're producing, and we'll give you an idea of what value you can generate from that. So the idea is that you reduce cost, you save money, and you also minimize the impact on the environment. So what that looks like is we'll make sure you're in an area that's that can actually receive our support. So that's Birmingham, Solihull, Tamworth, Lichfield, Redditch, Bromsgrove, the Wyre Forest, so sort of round to Hales Owen. So it's kind of Birmingham and Solihull in the main, and then that sort of arc above and arc below that encompasses Sutton Coldfield and sort of Bromsgrove, Redditch down the bottom. So if you're in that area, if you're an SME, then you can get this free support. We'll have a chat with you and try and make that as painless as possible to understand where the opportunities lie. So understanding what waste you're producing, understanding what energy producing, what your heating requirements are, etc., and then we'll look at how we can help you. And the idea is we can take away actions and act on those independently, so it's not pulling on more time. Once we progress that to an endpoint, we'll then report back to you and now allow you to sort of understand what the carbon savings have been, what the waste reduction numbers have been, and what the cost savings have been to your business. So hopefully that provides you with the impetus to do more of this type of work. So it's all about choosing an example, working it through to completion, allowing you to see the benefits, and hoping that is the seed for culture change and doing more of this work going forward. So those are the areas. If you've got an SME, so below 250 employees, turning over less than 50 million, if you're based in one of those areas, then you're eligible for some of this free support. There are contacts. Again, mindful of time, I'm going to hand over to Will, and I'm sure Will will tell you that we are one of many support agencies that are available for you to tap into. So please, if you felt inspired by anything you've heard today and you want to have a look at making your own journey, then make sure you are aware of the free support that's available and you make use of it. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you to the guest speakers today, and over to Will to conclude.
Thank you very much, Ian, and thank you to all of our speakers that have contributed to the presentation and to the panel earlier today. Some really interesting information delivered there, and I'll be sharing all of the slides as well as more as we go on. So to finish, I just wanted to share a program that the LEP has recently launched called the Clean Growth Program, and it actually dovetails very nicely with what we've just been discussing. So the Clean Growth Program essentially is 2 strands of grant-funded support available for businesses in the region, and the key one that dovetails nicely with the concept of the circular economy is the Green Innovation Pivot Reports. That is essentially offering a £4,000 grant fund for businesses to work with a consultant that will analyse their business operations and determine where and how they can make the most effective carbon savings, whether that is through building decarbonisation or whether that is through implementation of circular economy principles, for example. So if you are interested in exploring how you could implement the circular economy within your business, we are offering financial support to enable you to do that and to enable you to work with consultants that will deliver that deliver that work. So we're very flexible in the way that this money can be used. So for example, if you're wanting to apply for maybe an Innovate UK grant or one of the nationally available grants that are typically fairly challenging to apply for, this money can be used for that. Alternatively, if you have a certain waste stream or a certain product wastage, such as wood or kind of plastic that you're sending to landfill at the moment, this money can be used to explore how you could bring that back, not just into your supply chain, but into a regional supply chain as well. So I'll be sending out some more information around that side of things as well. And of course, this is just one area that the Growth Hub can and is supporting businesses in the local area. If you have any kind of questions or you're looking for further technical support around not just low carbon but other areas, the Growth Hub is very well positioned to send you on to further university programs, further support programs that we work with, essentially act as a kind of triaging service to send you to where you need to go. So these are our details. They're my details there, and I will obviously be sending around all the information that has been presented during this panel discussion session. So I think with that we're pretty much on time. So I'd just like to thank everyone for taking part, and again thank you to Ian and thank you to our speakers that have contributed. So yeah, if you'd like any further information, don't hesitate to contact myself or any of the other speakers, and hope to see you all at a Growth Hub event in the near future. Thank you very much. Bye bye.
Bye.